this is the concept, right? And so often define that as a farmer-centered development. This African is very, very different because it's a historic farm. It's been here 100 years. It has tiny homes. So those people that self-select are living in 400 square feet, right? It's not something that necessarily makes a lot of sense if that's not what we think is necessarily something that I am able to say in the setting, but it's really interesting the way that we are able to through this sort of like it's just like an opportunity to just like step back into something that we can want to see more and build, you know, really push and so then people can really introduce others here, you know. This is a huge opportunity for farmers to get started or to finish their careers because when you have a community that you're going to look for, it takes away a lot of your stresses because the developer or the community is contributing to your impact. You're not living in an environment. And with climate change, making things even more dramatic, farmers are going to lose more money. And so that is a losing income. So farmers need to be supported. And this, an agri-food system is an excellent way for farmers to get you got to work in the zoning of the rules that you have, but you've got to choose your teams. And having farmers in the community, it's really good. That's the only way to get ourselves out of this.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome to my presentation on the 10th grade pre-community of late-stage capitalism. There it is. My name is Kerr. I am a senior communication major with focus in journalism and media studies, certified accountant, and a former intern at Community Farms. So a little backstory. I had absolutely no prior interest in farming, community planning, anything like this until probably about a year ago. I was between jobs, had a lot of time on my hands to doom scroll, and ended up learning far too much about the current state of the climate crisis and what the future likely looks like. This drove me to get an internship at Community Farms, a little organic farm about 7 miles east of downtown Austin. That was fall 2022, or at the same time I was supposed to pick a topic for this project. I had about 4.5 ideas of climate-related whatever it was, and very quickly realized it would be pretty detrimental to my mental health to just read and write for months on end about Armageddon and Doom. I was ready to put the program all together, frankly, until Dr. and Professor Ron both kind of suggested, well, why don't you do something different, a documentary or something, maybe about this farm. I was like, it's a farm. It's fine. I have not much to say about it. I was more interested in the village farm neighborhood that exists there. So this was a new concept for me, as I'm sure it is for most of you. So new, in fact, this big Wikipedia definition is pretty much as good as it gets. I found it interesting because there were, the residents who lived there seemed to really, really love it. I had heard, bits and pieces from the farmers, very valid complaints about what was going well and what wasn't. At the end of the day, I went into this just sort of starting with nothing. How does this place work? What works well? What can we take away from this that we can maybe apply to other communities in the future? And doesn't really help, frankly. So these are all deceptively simple questions that turned out to be harder to answer than anticipated. Summaries to that. Number one, did not have much filmmaking experience. As you can probably tell from the trailer. Did my best, but as I'm sure most of my professors can tell you too, my forte is not planning necessarily, so I sort of went into this with, all right, let's just get everything we can, put it together later, and we'll, just kind of figure out the direction. There are more efficient ways of doing things, sure, but I think it did also give me a chance to look at this project from a more holistic perspective and, really stay open-minded to, what's going on here. Oh gosh, sorry. There we go. Brings you another big challenge that came up was just the lack of reference points. There are only about 100 ag codes in the U.S., give or take. Most of them are single-family homes. This one's all tiny homes. Most of them have HOAs or community-supported agriculture programs in which, the farm ensures, financial security for the farmers. This place doesn't matter. Which also kind of contributes to this idea of being narrative. Big thing that in everyone I interviewed, I did 4 interviews with residents who lived there, 2 farmers, and I came from the sales office. Laura's very helpful, that's okay, she's very, very nice. But I noticed during these interviews there's a certain reluctance to say too much about this community, what wasn't working too well. And I started to sympathize with this, the more time went on, because, like the farmers and the residents, I want this to work. I see the vision, and there's a fine line between painting it as, a failed experiment and some great success story, when it truly is neither. I had the farmers tell me at one point, like, oh, please be careful, people's livelihoods are at stake here. My response was generally, this is not going to Sundance or anything, but, I did take that idea of journalistic responsibility very seriously during this project. Even though this is not explicitly climate crisis focused, there is, a big conversation about how to cover those issues and how to really get across the gravity of the situation and desperate need for radical change without also, driving people into frozen fear and hopelessness and inaction. And telling this story honestly was challenging in a similar way. On one hand, it is idyllic. They're very, very passionate people who love their neighbors and care a lot about sustainability and ecology and really making this the best place it can possibly be. On the other hand, it is a for-profit corporate real estate development selling $200,000 tiny homes in a very low-income part of East Austin. Gentrification with plants. And though as things stand currently, I do think that it can be a good model for, farmers and communities to mutually benefit. It's also too little too late. Read the next IPCC report. Or don't, if you want to have a good rest of your day. But, point being, I titled this Green and Gray, Green Farm Plants, and I said the green, very clever, I know. The gray because, this community really felt like a gray area to me between something that could be very radical, very alternative, very cool, and sort of this bourgeois little farm community. And, my biggest kind of takeaway is that, when one side of a given extreme, in this case, rampant overconsumption, global planetary destruction, alienation, all of it, you name it, right? The fight if this side of things is so out of whack, then the gray area and the middle ground is truly no longer, a compromise of any kind. It is insufficient. Desperate times call for desperate moves. And I don't necessarily have any hope in terms of the mid or long-term future of getting ourselves out of this crisis. Tipping points have begun. I could go on, but that doesn't mean it's not important to create communities that can deal with the future that we are going to face. We'll still need to eat tomorrow. We will still need to grow food tomorrow. We still need each other. And the sooner that we really sit with the painful reality of the situation, and the sooner we take legitimate, meaningful steps to do so, the better. Real estate developers are not going to save us, and I think it is disingenuous and willfully ignorant to suggest that they might. But I am grateful for this project and give me informed insight into where can we go from here after this brief little stepping stone. I remember Dr. Monkey telling me that a lot of this project sort of has to do with what you see yourself doing after graduation. And I have no idea, and I can promise you all I'm not going to fix all the world's problems. I'm so sorry. We'll try again later. But, I think that this has given me a chance to really reflect on some very big, very difficult questions and inspire other people to think about them too, because we need to talk about it. It is time to really quit the denialism and start building something better. So, that's all I got. Thank you so much. Neglected to upload it to YouTube last night. I do plan to do so later today, and I will be happy to share it somewhere that can be shared.
Usually for the theses we'll have a library depository. Thank you to Brittany with a written document and a video of the presentation. But in the case of Cameron, if it's okay with them, we'll have both the video of his presentation and the film itself. So that will be immediate, but we'll get that out in the coming weeks. The rest of the presentation.
From your experience at Green Farms, I was just wondering if you could say like one thing that you saw working really great at that neighborhood, and maybe one thing that you would like to see improved.
It's difficult because in terms of, the working well, like this community started about a year before COVID, right? So there's really a lot of, I think, fundamental disconnect between, the farmers and the corporate aggregate side. I've got so many anecdotes, just this, lack of communication going on. So it is difficult to say structurally what is working well. Honestly, it is the people, this community really attracts people who care. And, it is both frustrating to see, that a lot of them volunteer what I might determine too much of their, free time and free labor to make this place work. But on the other hand, they're getting it done. And they're, all very committed to sort of the vision of what is being built. And, the farm is very committed to making that work too. They put on events and, community sort of potlucks and things like that using food from the farm. I think more of that would be great, like local community outreach. Because this place, again, it's in a very low income area. It is actually, I think, designated food desert out there. So I think that is working well. More of it can work well. I can go on and on about what is not working so well. I think truly the staff is a huge issue. There's been a lot of staff turnover and a lot of people who this corporate development firm hires. They're not farmers. They don't necessarily know anything, and it's great to see the residents and the farmers both being very patient in that. But at the same time, I see where the frustration comes from. So that's his question.
Thank you. Dr. Brown, can I invite you up to say a few words about the project and to present Cameron with the soul of the board that they'll learn graduation and recognition of this project, but also all the other work that you've done in honors?
Well, first, thank you. I should definitely say a few things. As everybody in the room knows, there's 3 reasons you become a college professor. Number 1 is the fame and the money and the deep love that America has for teaching. Gosh, I thought that would be a little, okay, all right. The second one is a Chipotle joke, but the third one really is that you learn from your students. And I learned an awful lot from Cameron. Ever since we've been on Zoom during the pandemic, Cameron took a very funky honors class with me about the pandemic, of the slowness of time and how we approach it. And one day we were doing a Cuban playwriting technique called the Fornes technique, where you meditate and explode and just let stuff fly out of you. And Cameron wrote this incredible play. It was just a monologue between themselves. And it was really something else. And what I began to realize is that it ended up with Cameron running away into a new adventure. And last semester, as Cameron was talking with me about this place, about this farm, I kept thinking, why don't you go into this without a thesis? Why don't you go into it and explore and let the story come to you? And Cameron shot a ton of footage. I mean, hours upon hours upon hours. And we put together a schedule where we'd say, all right, what you hear in February, what you hear in March, what you hear in April. And Cameron really came on strong, not only from every single step, but ultimately it led to, one, the trailer that you just saw, to the actual movie that you will, I'm sure, be watching later, and of course a paper that goes in depth and in detail to all the things that Cameron just brought up. It's really a wonderful, wonderful project that I think is very important. There was one thing, though, that I think that you were not very honest about, is that Cameron said this is not going to Sundance. Part of our agreement, as part of our contract, is that Cameron is going to take this and we're going to be sending it out to a couple of places, like South by Southwest, which has a Texas filmmaker division. And in all honesty, I would say this if Cameron wasn't here or not. I have to sit through those Texas filmmaker movies at South by every single year. It's better than any of them, by far. What is absolutely astonishing is that Cameron has been talking about, well, some of the technology and learning how to direct, complete and total natural. It has been an absolute thrill to work on this project with Cameron. Do you have any questions for me? No? Well then, I think it's time to be the rope around.